Good afternoon and welcome to this fingraphs.com podcast on Dukascopy TV. Today we're going to look at the US dollar, which is oversold, but will it rebound? We will do so using our mosaics on our fingraphs.com platform. On this mosaic, we look at the long-term view first, with weekly graphs of many dollar pairs. So we have euro dollar, we have cable, we have the Australian dollar versus the US dollar, the New Zealand dollar versus the US dollar, dollar yen, dollar Swiss, dollar CAD, and dollar NOK. Generally, what we could say is that the uptrend on most currencies versus the dollar seems very resilient and probably extends towards next year. You can see it with a strong uptrend towards 128 here in 12 months on the euro, towards 144 but probably 150 on cable, towards 0.85 on the Australian dollar, probably towards 0.79 on the New Zealand dollar. Yen is a bit different, as it is also defensive. The dollar did rebound versus yen, but we think it is reaching resistance. Dollar yen will probably roll over during the summer and attempt to make new lows towards the end of the year. Dollar Swiss is still moving lower and could make it down to 0.8384 over the next 12 months. Dollar CAD also moving lower, potentially into the low teens. Dollar NOK could also make it lower, below 8 and possibly down to 790. So in general, we're in a very strong downtrend versus the dollar on a longer term basis. Now, if we look at the daily graphs, we wonder if we're not getting a bit oversold on the dollar, so overbought on the other currencies versus the dollar. You can see that euro dollar has entered the overbought zone here, as well as cable. Euro dollar has envelopes touching each other, but we're not yet into the targets. On the other hand, cable seems to have reached its targets to the upside. The Australian dollar seems to be in some kind of a divergence, which could lead us down for a continuation of the correction that started back in March. It has also reached its impulsive targets to the upside. Likewise with the New Zealand dollar. Dollar yen is working differently. The yen is quite defensive and the dollar is trying to push higher versus the yen, probably into mid-year. It will probably not break out to the upside, but could probably make marginal new highs to the ones that were made about a month and a half ago. Dollar Swiss is reaching here some support with the lower end of our corrective targets to the downside. The risk index is quite low, not quite oversold yet. We could also imagine a rebound, less dynamic than here on dollar yen, but that could lead a dollar Swiss higher into the end of June, maybe July. Yet for the time being, dollar CAD is very oversold, but hasn't started to turn up yet. It has reached its targets to the downside. And dollar NOK is similarly quite oversold and has pretty much reached its targets. So what we're saying here is that most pairs seem overbought versus the dollar. So the dollar looks oversold. Targets have pretty much been reached on many pairs, but the move hasn't turned yet. And we think there's probably another week or so to go of this downside retesting on the US dollar before it eventually bounces into the second half of June and into July. To get more precise on the subject, we will look at euro dollar. As we mentioned previously, we're still in a strong resume uptrend situation on the weekly graph. We're not overbought yet, so we think the euro dollar will go higher with a 12-month time horizon, probably into 128, probably above 130. On the daily basis, it does seem like we also have quite a lot of potential, but we're getting overbought at the moment. We're getting overbought on our risk index and our envelopes are touching each other. So we may not be very far from an intermediate top. And when we look at the hourly graph, we probably started an initial period of correction, but we don't think this is the definitive one. We do think that we may have found support here towards late May, that we may retest up into next week, possibly making new highs, and that eventually, from mid-end next week, start correcting down on euro dollar. So again, the dollar is quite oversold, but a bounce may be another week or so away before it eventually materializes. Once it does, if it does make it below our corrective targets to the downside here, we believe that the downside potential on euro dollar is probably towards 118, 116 into mid-year, early July. And wishing you a very good week of trading. Thank you very much.